Uh, Hi, Tom. You're still muted. Try that again. Yeah. Okay. First of all, can everybody hear me? I think it's good. Good. Okay. But Tom, we still can't hear you. I see your lips moving, but
Yeah, where's Edgar Bergen where we really need him?
right.
You see his lips moving.
Hmm. Okay. Well, let's wait for Tom to get his technical problem resolved there. Let's see.
No.
Oh, I heard you this time, but we can't see you.
Yeah. So yeah, I changed the microphone.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Let's go. I'm ready now.
All right, so let me see here. I think we have everybody. Let me just check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, and let's see. AGP, are we recording now?
Yes, we are live and recording.
Excellent, thank you. All right, I think we're ready to commence. So I hereby call this regular meeting of the Cambria Community Services District to order. And let us, if you'll be so good as to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. So there we are. Ms. Riedel, the flag, if you please. There. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and I see that we do have 4 of our 5 directors are present, so we do have a quorum. And our vice president is presently somewhere probably on the Rhine. I understand that if she is able to join us, she might, but at any rate, I'm sure she's having a wonderful time. So it's probably not as a wonderful time as we're going to have. Okay. Let's see. So I want to talk to first, let's do the president's report and 2 small items. Let me see, first of all, here. I want to look at our audience, who we've got. All right, we definitely have a fair number of attendees. So it's appropriate at this time. I'm going to ask our counsel, Tim Carmel, to update everybody on the status of our litigation that's been ongoing for a while. So, Mr. Carmel, if you would, please.
Certainly, President Howell. Thankfully, the district prevailed in the Windler case. There will likely be an appeal that must be filed within 30 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmel. So it's good news, but this is no time to celebrate. And the other thing is, because we are 4, and due to the possibility of some irregularity in the connection, I think we do need to establish who should take over the meeting should I, for any reason, freeze up on you all. So I'd like to, without objection, so I'm asking for objections. Without objection, I would like to appoint Director Gray as a Vice President Pro Tem for this meeting, unless and until such time as as Vice President Dean is able to log on. But I don't have a lot of. So if without objection and with Director Gray's willingness.
I'm willing to, yes.
Okay, so without objection, it is so appointed. So. So yeah, if we freeze, Director Gray, just take over from there, and then keep the ball rolling until I get back on.
Will do.
I'm not anticipating that, but there have been a few issues lately. This is going to be an interesting meeting. We have some interesting topics ahead of us here. But let's go on with the agenda review, additions and deletions, please. Anybody want to? Actually, Can't really add anything, although I guess you could call out a new agenda item for next time if you want, but do we want to drop anything? Okay. Seeing no, I think we're good as we stand. So at this point, we're ready for board member communications. Any short communications from my fellow directors that you'd like to communicate with either the rest of us or with the community? This would be a good opportunity. All right, giving you just a chance to gather your thoughts. All right. Since we don't have any takers, let's continue on to the commission report, and that will be of the Pros Commission from Chairman Niffen. So, Mr. Niffen, please, the
Good
floor.
afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Oh, yes.
Perfect. So let's start with some good things. The skate park group is very excited about their win in the Pine Dorado Parade. They built a half pipe and won the youth entry award and the trophy that went along with that. So they were very proud of their efforts and their continuation in the process and providing the community with, a positive look. And if anybody saw the half pipe, and it was quite an endeavor, and it was not a simple chore. So they should be commended for that. They've got 530 in the bank right now, 530,000. That's along with the fine contribution of the CCSD. So those are the skate park update. They're moving forward with that. I'm sure the engineering and the process at the county is moving along at rapid speed. Okay, so other than that, then that takes us into what we were charged with last month, and our ad hoc committee met of Joyce and Kermit, and I believe you have the report now. They talk about the benches, the trash cans, and the trail around the East Ranch as the three items that they want to pursue as the next projects moving forward, which I don't want to start opening a can of worms, which I was like, oh, that's awesome. Those are three easy projects. I didn't really think of picnic tables, trash cans, and a trail as projects, but they're good projects and they're doable within the financial structures that we've been given, which are minimal, which is another can of worms and topic that we need to open up and get into, and whether or not today is the day. I'm sure my report's not the time to have that discussion, but the financing of all of this was a big topic at our meeting. And so that's gonna come up as we move forward here. But they did identify the three projects: the trash cans, the picnic table, and the trail around there, which we all thought was awesome. They're gonna meet later in the month again to discuss the larger, bigger projects that we don't have money for. It was kind of explained to us and made sense from Mr. Weigel's position that if we have our ducks in a row when the grants and things move forward, then we have a shovel-ready project. So it all makes sense. So they're working on that. But I did want to make a comment on the ad hoc committee because I felt like we discouraged the skate park and the Fiscalini Ranch people by saying they couldn't be on the ad hoc committee, which I guess is true. The ad hoc committee is just the members, but they're public. Like, I did my little research on ad hoc committees, and they're public meetings, right? They're public meetings. The time has to be publicly set. They can't hide the meeting. So the public is welcome to participate, which was really all our groups wanted to do, Kitty and the skate park people, which I think is appropriate as we look at those things. They weren't going to be voters, but we wanted them to participate. And so they didn't really get to participate in that portion of the ad hoc committee thing. But as we move forward, I think it's important that we encourage other groups to at least observe the ad hoc committee and what they're trying to accomplish. So that was that one thing I wanted to discuss. The other thing that was brought to my attention was that that the two items that you have for action before you today was not brought before the Pros Commission for us to weigh in on, which I like a government that governs least. I want less to do. I want more. So anything you don't ask my opinion on, I'm fine. but it would seem that those two items would have been appropriate items to bring to the pros commission. They brought the open space to us about the schoolhouse, but not about the pocket park again. And we've weighed in on the pocket park again. And the interesting thing about the pocket park is that Kermit and the bike people, which is a loosey-goosey group of people that are trying to figure out where to get some bike trails, and they've got no standing, they've got no 501c3. They're just a group of people doing what? They're trying to save the planet, because the one thing that we're all in agreement on is that we need to get out of cars and we need to get in bikes and we need to move human beings around the planet without using fossil fuels, and bikes are one of the ways to do it. And a bridge over the creek that connects to that piece of property is kind of something that is now becoming part of the discussion. Nobody's worried about that historical society. Everybody thinks they're a great group, and they'll probably be copacetic to a bridge over that. We just think it's a little interesting that we didn't get the opportunity to address those two topics. That being said, I'll hang around for the regular action item because I'm sure I'll get to weigh in there.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Niffen. Director Gray, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, President Howell. I just wanted to ask a question or maybe get a clarification on ad hoc committee procedures, because my understanding is that one, you can invite anybody you want to meet with you for input, as I understand it, because I've done a lot of ad hoc committees already, and we do that. And also the meetings are not standing committee meetings in that they have to be noticed in public and held in public. Now, Tim, maybe you can correct me on that, but an ad hoc committee has freedom to have meetings that are not publicly noticed in public meetings, and they have the freedom to invite people to give them input who are not on the ad hoc committee. Tim, if I'm wrong, let me know.
Okay.
Director Gray, you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Ad hocs can meet whenever, wherever they want.
Yeah.
They're certainly allowed to bring the public in. They can meet in restaurants, in their own homes. They're not subject to the Brown Act.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Carmel. Yeah, just to be before I call on you, Director Farmer. Yeah, so I think the takeaway, Mr. Niffen, is that Julie and Kitty can participate with your ad hoc just because they're members of the public like anybody else. And so if the ad hoc wants them to participate, they're welcome to do so. But the ad hoc isn't under any obligation to.
Not that my Google search would have any type of stand against Mr. Carmel's education, but so would I ask the question, can an ad hoc committee exclude people?
Oh,
Good question. I think I see Mr. Carmel.
And then the other thing is, what I read is that the meeting has to be announced. It
Oh,
can't be in secret.
yeah, no, that's because it only has to be announced if you're going to have a possible quorum.
right.
But yeah, but otherwise, no.
Well, not that I want to belabor this meeting with this. I find the conversation fascinating because I love open government. I want more discussion, more talking, not less.
So I think that you, as chairman of the Pros Commission, can direct that ad hoc to invite people, and you can also direct them to publicize their meetings. I mean, that's kind of up to you, I think. And I don't see anybody shaking their head on that one. So, but I was impressed with how shy folks were, and so I do want to encourage you all to please go forward, because everybody wants to participate. Enough said on my part. Director Farmer.
Thank you very much, President Howell. Just to let you know, I spoke with Kermit Johansson yesterday, and he's the person from PROS. He's one of the commissioners, and he's involved in the Trails Committee, so to speak. And so we had a little discussion with regard to the Pocket Park and the item that's on the agenda today. And so I believe he has submitted a written comment. He said he was going to try to make it to the meeting and make this statement in public comment as well as a written. But he has, like I say, submitted a comment with regard to what they plan to do with the trail that would go through the Pocket Park, but also he's also submitting his support of the Historical Society purchasing the Pocket Park.
Okay, thank you, Director Farmer. So when we get to the Pocket Park item there, we can bring Kermit's Mr. Johansson's letter forward. I thought I saw somebody else wanting to speak from here. Okay, I think it's time. Let's go to the public briefly to see if they have any issues they wish to weigh in. And then we'll come back. I'll make a final comment and then we'll go ahead and move forward. Yes, I see over here in the audience Dave Pearson wishing to speak. So Leah, would you be so good as to bring him in?
Hello.
Welcome, Mr. Pearson.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. In support of the Pros Commission, I understand that they're being tasked with quote unquote redesigning or replanning the East Ranch Community Park. And I really think that this is a little bit unfair to them. I don't think any of them have raised their hands as being experts in park planning, and having to do so without any funding and revising a plan that hasn't been followed, so is kind of, needs major revision, is kind of unfair to them to ask them to do that. So I think in his group need more support, either monetarily or whatever, in order to perform that task, if that's really what you're asking them to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to weigh in at this time? All right, seeing none. Leah, I doubt we have any general comment, do we, regarding the Pros Commission, or do we have something?
We do. We have 3 general comments.
Okay, just general comments. Related to pros or just way general?
General. Some of them actually relate to the COP financing from last week, but they came in late in the process.
Okay, let's save those then until we get to the full-on regular public comment. Okay.
Thought we were there. Sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't real clear. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Niffen. And let me just say one thing. I think I have to take some responsibility for neglecting to send the pocket park issue to Pros before we discussed it, and that's an oversight on my part. It's amazing that here we were talking about a park and not bringing in our Parks and Recreation, the Pros Commission on that. So I apologize. And I think your point is well taken. Okay, having said that, let us move on to now we are into general public comment. So this will be public comment on anything not on the agenda. And as usual, let me let you all know who's out there. There's 14 of you right now. I'll read anyone who's got 2 names, first and last name, I'll go ahead and announce your presence here. So we have Crosby and Laura Swartz, David Pearson, Deborah Scott, Don Sather, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, Jeffrey Forrest, John Nixon, Julie Amadei, Karen Chrisman, Kitty Connolly, and Michael Calderwood. So welcome, everybody, and glad to have you here with us. Having said that, this is now the generalized public comment, and I see Elizabeth Bettenhausen has her hands up. So please bring Ms. Bettenhausen in.
Thank you, President Howell.
Welcome.
I appreciate Council Carmel reporting on the resolution of the Windler case. I think it would be helpful to many in the community if the documents from the resolution of the case were posted on the CCSD website to update the material on the Windler case that's there now. There's quite a bit of material if you just search for Windler, and if you put the resolution of the case in terms of the excellent decisions by Her Majesty, Her Honor, the judge, that I would really appreciate. I think I said Her Majesty because I listened live on the radio to the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, and I was a huge fan in South Dakota, listening to her get insulted. So Her Majesty died today, as you know, and it's always a sobering reality that even royal people die. So again, if you'd post on the CCSD website, perhaps with a little notice that you've done that at the top there, I think many people would be interested in how the judge analyzed this case, because certainly the member of the staff, Ms. Bland, was quoted again and again by the judge in supporting her ruling or leading her even to her ruling. So I urge you to look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bettenhausen. Okay, next up is Jeffrey Forrest. Welcome, Mr. Forrest.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I just wanted to come back to it. I'm a property owner in Cambria. I have been for the past 20 years. I spoke on the August 11th meeting and requested for there to be a separate meeting, or at a minimum, an agenda item added to one of the subsequent meetings to address the building moratorium. My previous comments were in the 39th minute of that recorded call on August 11th. So today, just for the record, I wanted to acknowledge that two things. One, I submitted a public record request for the reason the moratorium is in place. And I want to make a second request that this Cambria Community Service District Board please address why the moratorium is still in effect after 20 years. To my knowledge, the moratorium went into effect due to contamination of the Santa Rosa Creek well back in 2001. That's been resolved. We know that the town last year used 542 acre feet of water among 1,017 acre feet, so roughly half the water supply. And we know that the water reclamation facility can produce 250 acre feet of water with an additional positive flow of 81 acre feet into the San Simeon Creek. So with the build outs being 15%, just want to get some answers here. We've been very patient, been waiting. And if I'm off with any of my facts or my numbers, then I'd really like to hear from one of the experts, one of the engineers from the Water Services Department or the Water Reclamation Facility on the next call. So there's some questions that we have, those of us that have lots and have waterway positions. Why are we still dealing with a moratorium? Has the contamination to the Santa Rosa Creek been resolved? What are the most accurate water availability and use numbers? And what is the official capacity of the water reclamation facility? Just to confirm that for public record. We paid our taxes, our mitigation fees, our waterway positions for 20 years, and we deserve a response. So President Howell, I just want to put it to you on the August 11th call. Those of us that were in the public comment could not request future agenda items. So is this sufficient right now in this comment section to have this listed as a future agenda item?
All right, I can answer your question. It is legitimate for the public to ask for future agenda items at this time. And we do take those into consideration. It doesn't, however, guarantee that we will discuss everything that people want at the time that they would like. You do ask some very important questions, and I'm sure many would like some answers to that. So, you're not out of order to ask for that. So I've noted it here, and we'll see if there's something we can do to shed some light on some of these issues.
Well, I appreciate it. And I think having one of the experts on the call to specifically speak to the numbers that are out there and why this moratorium is in effect, because it seems like it's an outdated thing. And if it is a water issue, then let's have a discussion about that. And based on the numbers that we see that are in the public domain, it is not a water availability issue. So is there a date that we can get this on the schedule, or how does that work?
Okay, I can't really commit to a particular date, but all I can tell you at this point is that we have heard your request, and if you have any, there are some things that I did write a response to Mr. Dudzik, and if you're acquainted with him, you might ask to see the response that I sent to him, and I think Daryl Robinson has a copy of that. That might answer some of your questions. But I don't want to engage in a back and forth at this point, but please be aware that I have noted that, and we will discuss the issue of when and how to put something on the agenda that might address your concern.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Anybody else want to speak in public, generalized public comment? All right, seeing none there, I believe, Ms. Riedel, we do have some general public comment in writing, yes?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
The first is from Lauren Younger regarding the loan, the COP financing that was addressed at our last meeting. I support waiting to take any action until the whole community has time to weigh in with well-informed reactions. And wait until you've had time to listen to us and respond to us. Remember, you are one of us if you live here, not one of them, whoever they are, rushing us into another fiasco for their own purposes. Do not sign for a loan at this time, and please consider lagoons and wetlands for the replenishing of our water sources. Makes sense and is a one-time large cost, and then just caretaking, formerly known as maintenance costs, employing more Cambrians. Thank you, Lauren Younger. And this is from Gregor's Dekowicz. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that last name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not. Thank you for responding. I'm sorry, I'm going to start down here. I have had a chance. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
Okay. I've had a chance to review documents posted related to the proposed financing and wanted to express my concerns as a taxpayer in Cambria. I have a number of years of experience reviewing financial aspects of municipal issuances and noted a number of red flags, at least on the surface, with respect to this deal, not having all the relevant information. The estimates of interest rates, costs, and costs of issuance seem very high, considering that it's a straightforward muni deal, and even though interest rates have risen sharply within the past year. This raises a number of questions with respect to the municipal advisor and the underwriter. Why was this particular municipal advisor chosen, as its fees appear very high? Did the MA evaluate a number of different underwriters, and why was this particular one chosen? Maybe another underwriter has a much better distribution network and can place the deal at much better rates. Over the years, I have observed symbiotic relationships between the MAs and underwriters, often to the detriment of municipalities. Assuming these questions are answered satisfactorily, the board should make sure that the MA obtains quotes from several bond issuers and performs its own analysis of whether bond insurance premiums do not outweigh the reduced interest rate costs. Next, the pricing of the deal. The MA should conduct an independent search for comparable transactions and review of initial orders that come in to make sure the deal is optimally priced. CUSIPs that are oversubscribed 5 times or more should receive yield bumps or reductions in yield of at least several basis points. Oversubscriptions of 10 times or more should receive particularly meaningful yield reductions, and the MA should monitor whether yield reductions reduced the oversubscription levels to more normal levels of not more than 5 times. If not, the MA should request another round of yield reductions. If the MA is not pushing back on the underwriter, it's not doing its job, and we, the taxpayers, will pay the price in higher interest rate costs for years to come. I hope the board will keep an eagle eye on this. Lastly, has another type of issuance, i.e. general obligation bonds, been considered and decided against? COPs generally have higher interest rates because of no pledge of full faith and credit, but the taxpayers are on the hook anyway through increased rates and are lawyer intensive, hence partially the high issuance costs. Anyway, I hope all these matters are considered and the resulting issuance will be on the best possible terms for Cambria. Thank you, Greg Dekowicz.
Thank you.
And this one pertains to grant funding for water infrastructure. I wanted to bring to the CCSD board members' attention to the June 9, 2022 press release of the California Department of Water Resources. The department released the grant program guidelines and proposed solicitation packages for $193 million in grant funding to help local agencies advance water infrastructure and resilience projects. Quoting from the press release, the critical statewide funding will support projects such as water desalination, water conservation, and groundwater recharge projects. They go on to say, quote, "We must invest in water in infrastructure and work towards a drought-proof and sustainable water supply that supports our communities and the environment into the future." Attached is a copy of the department's press release that identifies where the CCSD can find the application requirements, deadlines, etc. This is a great opportunity for the CCSD to improve the water infrastructure of the community without placing the financial burden on local residents and future residents. Yours truly, Jeff Davis and Jane Jensen Davis, former Cambria residents.
Well, thank you, Ms. Riedel. Is that okay? I see that we do have a little more live public comment here. So let's go back to the audience again, and we have Michael Calderwood followed by Daryl Robinson.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and board and public. I'm a little puzzled, as I generally am, and curious about some of the public comment and some of the discussions around the actions that were taken last week, particularly around the implied surprise that there was going to be a funding mechanism to meet all of the needs of the wastewater treatment plant. And I scratched my head a little bit on that, having been a frequent attender of many meetings. And I put a request out to a staff member with this following question. I said, about how many times since, let's say, January 1st, has there been public discussion, either in a board meeting, a special meeting, a finance committee meeting, a R&I committee meeting, that included presentations from Bartle Wells and other people associated with that? Because in my mind, this has been incredibly transparent and over-explained. Here's the result I got. And I will send this in through board comment. Public board meetings, which include meetings such as this, strategic plan meetings and other discussions, 16 times between January 1st and last week. We move over to our infrastructure and resources meeting. We have 6 instances of meetings that have contained this discussion. And then the finance committee had 5 meetings with this. I'm going to submit this through board comment, the document. The document contains the dates of these meetings, links to either the recordings of the meetings and or the agenda items for that. So the public can look at this and see for themselves and ask themselves the question, just because somebody says something is true, does it mean it's true? Is this a fact or is this a feeling? And how can I, as a concerned member of the public with many questions, go to the base source of all this information and find out for myself and not rely on opinion or rely on emotion? But let's look at the facts and the data. 16, 6, and 5 public meetings with this in the subject. I think that's an important fact for the public to understand. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Calderwood. Okay, we have Daryl Robinson, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I apologize. My service had dropped off when you invited comments before, so thanks for recognizing me. I just wanted to follow up quickly on Mr. Forrest's comments and clarify that the way we understand things, the district's urban water management plan does not provide any justification for the need to continue the moratorium if you just look at the facts. But the Coastal Commission still refuses to allow permit or housing construction to go forward, even with people who have grandfathered permits that are not subject to the moratorium. So clearly you've got a very serious difference in opinion of what the water safe capacity is between the district and its staff and the Coastal Commission. And I think that if any reasonable person was to consider that situation, they would say that the water district knows more about its water supply than the Coastal Commission. And yet, in spite of that, the Coastal Commission demands the last word. And we understand that they have superior authority. So it kind of doesn't really matter here what the CCSD says. So what we would really like to know from your district and your board is, are you fighting for the truth against the Coastal Commission to demonstrate to them that you do understand your own water availability, and that when you say you can serve someone, you can. So I know there's been some discussion on that between your two agencies, and I know that the Coastal Commission has criticized the district for some of its recent moves in that regard. But I do think that as long time awaiting customers, at the very least, we are owed energetic efforts by the CCSD to win its case with the Coastal Commission that you have the water you say you have. That's my comments for today. Thanks for the time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Robinson. Do you have any additional public comment this time? All right, at this point, we can move into the regular business. Before we move on, Director Steidel, do you think any of this discussion might be of some value for your ad hoc to interact with and to address some of these issues? Do you feel, is that something that would be worthwhile for you to do? I think you and Vice President Dean are the only ones that are really fully, I just don't feel competent to even answer some of those issues. You're muted at the moment.
Oh, muted. Oh, yeah.
I did not, if I mean, for these reasons, if you would like to have them. As relates to the first one, that's something that's being requested by the Fiscal Unity Ranch Reserve. I don't see that there's a direct financial impact to the district in this way, that the Finance Committee needs to be taking a look at that. I think that any costs related to potential signage or other things of that nature will be borne outside the CCSD. As far as the second item, the MOU on the pocket park, that's more that it isn't necessarily a financial transaction, it is a legal transaction, and just understanding the implications of the Historic Society owning that piece of property. But I can discuss that more when we get to that position. But thank you for the opportunity and the request for feedback. So the short answer is no.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I think we're ready to commence with regular business. So the first item, 5A, let us see. So this will be considering an ordinance. I'm going to abbreviate here and let it be fully introduced. This is having to do with regarding dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve. So GM Weigold, I think let me turn it over to you, and then I see that we may have Mr. Mendoza and Mr. Carmel involved here as well.
Thank you, President Howell. Agenda 5A is discussion and consideration of an introduction of Ordinance 01-2022, adding Chapter 7.17 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve. Staff recommends that the Board of Directors discuss and consider introduced by title only and waive further reading Ordinance 01-2022, adding Chapter 7.17 to the District Municipal Code. The background on this is there have been an increase in number of incidents of dogs off leash, attacking other dogs, attacking people. And while the ranch manager has the authority to implement new rules and regulations, adding this as a code puts teeth into the rule by allowing contact to the county sheriff for the imposition of fines. And so therein lies the issue of moving it to a code to add some teeth to it. And District Council Carmel is standing by, as well as Carlos Mendoza, who can talk a little bit more about some of the detailed incidents that have been occurring there on the ranch. And I think we have John Nixon from the FFRP here as well. We've been working closely with that organization. And John had sent a letter to us requesting this change.
Thank you, Jim Weigold. Let's see, I think perhaps Mr. Mendoza might be good to hear from you next.
Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the consideration for this ordinance. The dog off-leash issue isn't a new issue for the Fiscalini Ranch. It's actually been an issue that has been going on for a number of years, but has been magnified the last couple of years. And I think there's a couple of factors that have contributed to that. The main factors is the popularity of the ranch. As more people find the ranch, they hear about the ranch, they want to come out and experience the preserve. The other factor has been the pandemic, and the pandemic has showed us how important open spaces are to people's lives. And so when the pandemic hit, we saw a flooding of people come onto the ranch. Well, with that increase of usage, we're also seeing an increase in user conflicts on the ranch. The staff report mentions a few of the issues that we've observed because of dogs being off leash. Both FFRP and myself have received calls, have seen issues where dogs are attacking other dogs, where dogs are chasing bicyclists, where dogs are chasing horseback riders on the ranch, where dogs are biting people, dogs are knocking people down, dogs are chasing the wildlife, and in some cases, dogs have killed wildlife out on the preserve. And we have also seen dogs gotten hurt out there by being off leash. So there are some significant issues that we're seeing out there. And again, the increase in usage has made this thing a little bit magnified. The staff report mentions several instances, the ranch management plan, and the ranch management plan is the guiding document that guides both CCSD and the ranch manager on how to care for the ranch. There is also a vision statement on the ranch management plan, and I just wanted to read one sentence from that vision on how the ranch is supposed to be cared for or used. Directly from the ranch management plan, it says, "It is the overall philosophy of the plan to allow the public to experience these natural resources in a safe and reasonable manner while protecting and restoring the more sensitive and valuable habitats of the ranch." So it's my opinion, after seeing all these incidents, that the public isn't being able to experience the ranch in a safe and reasonable manner, and also having dogs off leash is not protecting or restoring the valuable habitats of the ranch. As General Manager Weigold mentioned, there are a number of FFRP representatives here. One of the key components to any rule and trying to enforce that rule is public education. So we are going to be partnering with FFRP in a very robust public education outreach to educate the public on the need for this rule and the reasons why. I'll leave it at that unless you have any questions. Appreciate the opportunity for those statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Mr. Carmel, before we go forward, are there any, there were some issues brought into my attention in terms of, is it possible, how can I say this? Are there, in your opinion, any? I presume that you have looked at the ordinance and that you've probably or much of it. There was something raised in my excuse me. Do we get into some kind of a problem because we do allow off-leash behavior at the dog park? Does that actually give us a problem in terms of not allowing off-leash dogs on the rest of the ranch?
The ordinance addresses the issue by saying, except at the Cambria Dog Park located on the Rodeo Grounds Road, no person shall allow a dog to run at large. So you are allowed to run at large within the dog park. So I think it's addressed adequately.
Okay, yeah, and there, I guess it would have been presented to me, but not with a lot of supporting that there might be some overarching legislation that would prevent carving out a dog park exception. But if you're comfortable, then I think we can go forward with it and not be too concerned on it.
No, that's not the case. I drafted the ordinance with David, so I stand by it.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I think let's go to the public first, and then come back to the board for further discussion. Okay. I know we're getting quite a few folks out here, and I do believe there was at least one written letter, rather extensive letter regarding this as well. Excuse me. So let us start with Lisa Marie Belsanti, please, followed by John Nixon, and then Kitty Connolly. Excuse me.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. My name is Lisa Marie Belsanti, and I'm a Cambria resident. Bought my home very close to the ranch to enjoy the ranch with my family and the four-legged members of my family. And I just have to say that, you know, we've been coming here for the last 20 plus years. There used to be parts of the ranch that did allow for off-leash, and we abided by those trails. But this new policy of no dogs off leash anywhere is punitive, especially to dog owners who have well-behaved dogs. My dog's under my voice command. If I have him off leash, the moment I see someone coming, I put him back on leash and he doesn't run amok. I think you're going to have scofflaws no matter what you do, and denying the public, especially members of the public who have contributed to the ranch, fundraisers, cleanup days, by narrowly crafting something that really deals with the worst offenders. And there's nothing more offensive to a responsible dog owner than an irresponsible dog owner. And you're not addressing some of the other increased usages on the ranch that are more disruptive, like electric bicycles and groups of people who are driving through on e-bikes as if they're on dirt bikes. That is also something that could create liability and injury. So I am deeply disappointed that having my dog off leash is akin to a misdemeanor. I do think that you are not focusing on the worst offenders, and I wish this board would reconsider the allowance for dogs that are under voice command to continue, because they're also part of us enjoying nature.
Oh, Don, you're muted. President Howell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Belsanti. Okay, Mr. Nixon, please. Welcome, Mr. Nixon.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Good afternoon, CCSD directors and General Manager Weigold. I'm John Nixon, Chair of the Board of Directors for the Friends of the Fiskina Ranch Preserve, and I thank you for recognizing the importance of the issue and for proposing an ordinance that will bring clarity and consistency to the rule that dogs on the ranch must be on leash. As Carlos described well, dogs off leash on the ranch pose a constant and long-standing challenge to maintaining a safe experience for visitors, dogs, and resident animals. The history of the ranch and the ambiguity of a county ordinance regarding dogs off leash have not been helpful in communicating and educating visitors to the ranch about requiring dogs on leash. FFRP and CCSD enjoy a very productive partnership in protecting and maintaining the ranch. An approval of this ordinance will allow FFRP to develop an educational campaign in cooperation with CCSD on the requirement that dogs must be on leash without having to explain a vague history and a vague wording of a county ordinance. FFRP will pay for new signs on the ranch that will cite the CCSD ordinance, replacing citation of county ordinance. FFRP also will mount a communication and education campaign in the community to ensure that the ordinance is understood by all. The mission of FFRP is to protect the beauty of the Fiscally Ranch Preserve and sustain its diversity of life for everyone to enjoy. And for everyone to enjoy the ranch safely and without fear of harm to themselves, their dogs, and the animals that call the ranch home, I urge you to adopt the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Okay, Kitty Connolly, please.
Good afternoon, Director Hall and Board. Thank you for letting me speak on this issue. I'm Kitty Conley, Executive Director of the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve. FFRP is responsible for enforcing the conservation easement on the ranch, and we're very pleased to partner with CCSD in protecting the ranch. As a preserve, Fiscalini Ranch needs to conserve those values for which it was set aside. This often means balancing protecting natural resources with providing public access to nature. A longstanding challenge to meeting that balance is the conflict between off-leash dogs and other users, both human and animal. FFRP has documents dating back to at least 2004 on the negative impacts of off-leash dogs on the nature preserve. So this has been a very long-term issue for the organization. It's an ongoing issue, which I've discussed at PROS and NCAC. I'm regularly contacted with people who've been attacked by off-leash dogs or the dogs have been attacked. Many are apologetic for bringing this issue up as if human safety and comfort was secondary to that of domestic pets. I don't believe that is our mission. The worst for me is when people report that they feel so unsafe on the ranch that they've stopped visiting it because they're afraid they're going to be attacked by off-leash dogs. The impacts are not limited to people. In addition to direct mortality of wildlife by off-leash dogs, studies in Colorado have shown that wildlife activity is lowered within 15 to 300 feet of paths areas where off-leash dogs have activity, including the lingering smell of the dogs. Allowing dogs to roam freely reduces the area of the preserve where wildlife is safe. Stress brought about by free-ranging dogs can reduce wildlife's reproduction and growth, suppress their immune responses, and increase their vulnerability to disease, as well as displace their activity from the evening, from daylight hours to evening. So it can really disrupt their entire life cycle. This issue has been growing in importance, as Carlos pointed out, in recent years, as the preserve has become more popular, both with locals and with visitors. The history of the issue and the way leash laws have been enforced has brought confusion to everyone. Mm-hmm. This ordinance will eliminate confusion and loopholes for off-leash dogs. Fiscalini Ranch Preserve is one of the few public places where dogs are allowed on the Central Coast, on the coast. We support an ordinance that promotes safe visits for all and protects the preserve's natural inhabitants. Thank you for considering this.
Thank you, Ms. Connolly. Do we have any additional comment from the folks in the audience? Okay, well, they're thinking a little bit. Ms. Riedel, I know that we have at least one letter. I don't remember the writer, but I think you have it.
Is it Stephen Edwards?
Yeah, I think that was.
Edwards, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I am unable to join in the webinar meeting on September 8th at 1 p.m. discussion with the dog task force, but I would like to express my concern of unleashed dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, especially on the Marine Terrace Trail Road. I ride a bicycle across the Marine Terrace Trail Road several times a week in both directions, as it is the easiest access to Highway 1 for a good bike workout. Nearly every time I ride across the ranch, an unleashed dog will be on the road. Most of the time, these unleashed dogs are well behaved and obey their handlers' instructions. Other times, unleashed dogs will wander all over the road and cause me to swerve, excuse me, to avoid a collision. In April of this year, I was bitten twice by 2 different unleashed dogs while riding my bike, and in the following months, I've had to avoid aggressive or maybe friendly unleashed dogs chasing me. When confronting the dog owners about their uncontrolled pets, they almost always become belligerent and uncooperative and shout obscenities at me. I asked Kitty Connolly, Friends of Fiscalini Ranch Preserve Director, if she could install larger signs that were more explicit about county leash laws. Currently, there is one small sign that politely asks dog owners to keep their dogs on a leash because of the wildlife. How about a large sign at every ranch entrance that threatens legal action and a fine if your dog is off leash, and a posted phone number to report violators? One of my concerns is the possibility of a serious dog bite from an unleashed dog and a legal action suit against CCSD and or Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve. Also, dog owners that allow their dogs to wander freely believe that there is no law or ordinance that requires the dog to be leashed, especially on the ranch. They are unaware that San Luis Obispo County has a leash law. Additionally, in June, the app Nextdoor had several comments and concerns about dogs running loose on the Forrest and ridge trails that run through Upper Fiscalini. I hope that you will consider my comments. I know it is difficult to control dog owners and their attitudes, but a few explicit, large, anti-off-leash signs posted at all entries to the Fiscalini Preserve would slow this activity. Regards, Robert Edwards.
Thank you, Ms. Riedel. Do we have any additional written comment?
Not for this item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last call to the public for commentary. All right, going once, going twice. Yes, Mr. Calderwood, please.
Hi again. So I seem to be slow on the draw today. I apologize for that. I think this is a great step forward. You know, I love the ranch. I love dogs. I love people. But many instances of folks who don't take the same consideration for their fellow travelers there just present too much danger. And I think the ordinance is great. I think it clarifies things. My main concern about it is who's going to enforce it. I'm out walking on the ranch and there are 9 other people scattered across the many acres, and there's a person with a dog off the leash and he comes running at me. What do I do? You know, I'm sure Carlos, I don't know, maybe he gets a new uniform or something and a whistle, but in all practical terms, how do we enforce this? And then the second part of that question is, if we enact this ordinance and codify it, and we don't enforce it and someone gets hurt, is there some sort of implied liability there for the district or for the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch for not enforcing the ordinance and resulting in injury to somebody? But other than that, I think this is something that we need to do, but I just don't know the answer to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calderwood. Do we have any other comment from the folks out there? Okay, not seeing anything. I'm going to exercise a little executive privilege and ask Mr. Carmel, can we answer Mr. Calderwood's 2 questions? Who enforces and what happens if we don't enforce?
Certainly, President Howell. It can be enforced in a number of ways. Primarily, it would be by the sheriff at this point in time, who would have the authority to enforce this by citation, which would be an infraction. I know the signage will probably have some impact. You know, we'll indicate on the signage that it is a criminal violation. There are other methods of enforcement. You have the authority under the government code to empower your employees to enforce, to have citation authority. I don't know whether that's a direction you want to go, but it's certainly available to you if you want to go there. So those would be the primary ways of enforcing this law.
Thank you.
With regard to the second question, is there liability for failing to enforce it? And the answer to that is no. The government code immunizes public entities for a failure to enforce their laws for obvious reasons, because it could expose them to enormous damages. Those damages are borne by the public. So I hope those answer the questions.
Thank you. Yes, that's great clarity. That helped a lot. So the issue about empowering staff to give them of enforcement authority would be a separate question that we would deal with at another time.
Mm-hmm.
First, we have to have the ordinance in place, and then make that. That's my. Correct me if I'm mistaken there, but it seems to me that's the probably the way we need to go on that. Would that be it? Would that be true? I'm sorry. I'm Mr. Carmel. I'm still talking to you, I guess. So, am I correct? We get the ordinance first, and then we can worry about whether we want to give staff the responsibility of enforcing it.
That's correct. You can certainly have the discussion now. It's well within the subject matter, but you would get the ordinance in place and then determine whether you're going to authorize Carlos or someone else to enforce it.
Oh, well, I guess my question would be, could we then have the authorization be a separate motion with after we adopt the ordinance, or I'm just not quite sure.
I don't think that we've set it up for that. I'd prefer to delay that action and thoroughly research it. I mean, I know you can. I have the law in front of me, but I'd rather prepare a staff report and make it clear what we're doing.
Good. That makes sense to me. I just wanted to be sure about that. Okay, I see we have two hands up. So let me start with, again, I don't remember which of you were first, so I'll just go left to right. So I'll start with Director Gray, and then Director Steidel, and then Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Howell. I just had a question, actually a short question for Tim about the status of the county ordinance. As I understand it, we as public property are under that ordinance, right?
Mr. Carmel.
We're governed by that ordinance.
That's correct.
Yes, and we can't do anything more lenient than that. I would assume, for instance, having a rule where if dogs were not at heel, they're okay. We have to actually technically be at least as strict as that ordinance, correct?
In theory, yes.
In theory, yes. Okay. Well, the reason I raise that is that we're already stuck with an ordinance, which is you get the intent of it. It's just to have, keep dogs on the trail, but it's not practical because it's they actually explicitly, it says they have to be at heel. I've never seen a dog off leash at heel on the Fiscalini Ranch. And so what we have in effect is we're not following that ordinance now. So I think I'm ready to move that we adopt the ordinance on the grounds that we do need this clarification of what it means to have a dog under control on the ranch trails. And it's, there's been ample demonstration today of all the problems from all the people who have responsibility for the ranch and the preserve. So I don't think there's any question that we have an issue here we have to deal with clarity. I also say on the enforcement issue that there is a phenomenon when the word gets out, which it will, that this ordinance has been passed, that the people who, especially people who have dogs on leash, might indulge in a little more social enforcement, I would call it. It can be as much as dirty looks or little conversations they have with people who are, continuing not to obey the rule. I think that will organically occur once we pass this ordinance, because and it, again, if it's publicized properly and the signage is changed. So part of the enforcement problem, I think, will be taken care of, and we'll have the sheriff for extreme cases if someone is just belligerently refusing to obey it or something, or a case like that. But I think a lot will happen without having to go that route and having to put Carlos in a uniform, with the sidearm and everything. So, so without further ado, I'd like to move that we adopt Ordinance 01-2022, adding Chapter 7.17 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve. And I don't know if I have to also say waive further reading.
Further reading, I think. Yeah.
And to waive further reading.
Is that Mr.
Can I clarify that motion so that it's clear in the record? That would be a motion to introduce ordinance number 01-2022, an ordinance adding Chapter 7.16 to the Cambria Community Services District Municipal Code regarding dogs on the Fiscalini Ranch Preserve, and waive further reading.
Waive further reading. Is it Chapter 7.17 is what I have in mind.
There's a mistake there. If you actually look at the ordinance itself, it's chapter 7.16. That's my fault.
Be sure that record shows that. Thank
Okay,
you.
first, before we, do we have a second on the motion, and then we'll go to anybody? Okay, seconded by Director Stidel. Okay, now we're back to discussion. So Director Stidel, it was your turn next, and then Director Farmer.
Yes, I had to check my microphone. Thank you, President Howell. I did second this, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to, that led me to this position, and I just wanted to state them. Many owners feel that they have complete control and command over the furry members of their family, but we're human beings. Personal perceptions can vary greatly, and unfamiliar behavior in a family member, no matter the species, is always surprising. Not everyone may want to greet a friendly dog or to have their dog greet another for many diverse reasons. And animals, no matter how well trained, can react to noises or actions. A friendly off-leash dog can approach with a bounce in their step and potentially be viewed as threatening by a leashed dog or their owner and become aggressive to the happy bouncer. Wildlife doesn't know that your dog is friendly and just wants to say hi. Off-leash dogs can leave deposits unnoticed by their owner. Not everyone visiting the ranch will have the same respect for the preserve as locals and might possess, as locals might possess escorting off-leash dogs. The purpose of this ordinance is to remove the multiple interpretations personally applied by users on the ranch. It considers the community and the ranch as a whole, rather than fashioning allowances for a specific group, while communicating expectations to visitors, which I think is probably one of the singularly important items in this regard, because people have traits with their animals that are very different maybe from the area that they're commuting from, and that can be an issue for us in a ranch environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stidel. Director Farmer, please.
Thank you very much, President Howell. First, I want to comment on Mr. Edwards' statement with regard to, riding his bike on the Marine Terrace Trail and being attacked by dogs, being bitten by dogs. This is, to me, the fact that people walk their dogs and they have no control over their animals, and therefore their animals threaten other human beings in one fashion or another is a problem. And I don't know how to address irresponsible dog owner behavior. I do not know how to address that, okay? However, I would like to thank Lisa Belsante for her statement with regard to those of us that have lived here for a long time, that have walked our dogs off leash with no problem on the ranch for years. So now I'd like to read my written statement. By the way, hearing from John and Carlos and Kitty, John Nixon, Carlos Mendoza, and Kitty Connolly. I have tremendous respect for these folks, and I totally understand where they're coming from with regard to this increase of people, irresponsible dog owners that are visiting the ranch, many of them who do not live here, okay? And they're creating a problem for all of us that have lived here for a long time. So I'm an almost 36-year resident, November 1st. So this is a kind of a collective statement. Many of us have been walking our canine companions on the ranch off leash for years without incident. I have witnessed barely a handful of occasions when dogs off leash were a problem, and these were mainly with people who do not live here. Also, I have noticed that folks who do live here, who can't necessarily control their dogs, have had them on leash. This has kind of been the way things have been for years. Now, presently, when I'm walking my canine companion, and I do not go down on the Bluff Trail, I haven't been on the Bluff Trail for decades, and I don't walk the Marine Terrace very infrequently without problem, but considering what I just heard from Mr. Edwards, I don't think I'm going to be walking that area anymore. So presently, while walking my companion, if I come upon someone with their dog on leash, I'll either ask them if they mind if my dog is off leash, which they usually don't, or I put my dog on a leash if there's concern. Now, most folks I've seen with their dog on leash will either acknowledge or it is obvious that they would not be able to control their dogs if they were off leash. So, and I'm going to kind of try to follow up on what Ms. Belsante said. Perhaps a compromise could be considered here, where a certain area, perhaps a portion up in the wooded area where you come in off of Trenton or off of Tipton, where part of the Forrest Loop Trail and the Trenton Trail could be available for canine companions to be walked without having to be on leash. My personal observation over many years with walking my dogs either on the road or on the ranch or whatever, the dogs off leash have more fun, they get better exercise, and they have very little difficulty interacting with other dogs on or off leash or with their owners. So that's my statement. And, I'm seriously concerned. And, this is just another phenomena of what's going on in our society, where people are becoming more and more unfriendly and more difficult to deal with, whether it's them personally or whether it's them and their four-leggeds. And I feel as if good people should not be good people, and their basically good behavior should not be penalized because of this situation that's going on. We love our canine companions, and it gets expressed through their behavior. And that's how I feel. And that's my statement. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Director Farmer. Do you have any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, I was going to make two comments. I want to mention what Ms. Belsante's, she mentioned, why are we worried about dogs and why not about e-bikes? The one thing does not preclude the other, and the issue of e-bikes on the ranch will no doubt come before either this board or the next board, because it is definitely going to be, we can see that it's going to be it is a developing problem. So Ms. Belsante doesn't need to worry. We'll be dealing with, we or the next board will be dealing with e-bikes. The other thing that I would like to say in response to, I understand that I think we have to be aware that we're talking about the ranch. And having any area of the ranch which permits off-leash dogs will be a threat to wildlife. There's no way around that. There is just no way. I suppose the one possible place would be that very, I forget what he just called it, where he rides his bicycle across, the gravel road across, would be possibly the only place where an off-leash dog could be trusted to not harass the wildlife, but that is the very place where we are having some of these attacks. So I don't think that is a viable solution. And to our dog owners out there, I think that it would be a mistake to assume that this board or any previous board is hostile to dogs. I mean, the CCSD spent, I believe, $300,000 to create a dog park. And that dog park only benefits the dog owners in this community. So I think the dog owners are probably already got more than some of the rest of us in terms. I suppose we need a cat park and maybe, we don't have any little children's playgrounds. I mean, there are other things. So the dog owners are lucking out on this one. Enough said. I think you're ready for a vote. Are we ready for a vote? Okay. Ms. Riedel, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Gray?
Aye.
Director Gray, aye. Director Stidel?
Aye.
Director Stidel, aye. Director Farmer?
No.
Director Farmer, no. And President Howell?
Aye.
President Howell, aye.
So the motion passes 3-1 with one director absent and Director Farmer in dissent. All right, I think we are now ready for, does anyone need a break before we take the next item? Nope. We're just, okay. This will be 5B, and this will be, again, I'll just shorten the introduction here and leave it to others. This is the issue of reaching an agreement with the Historical Society regarding the sale of the Pocket Park. So again, let's see, GM Weigold, why don't you start this one out?
Thank you, President Howell. Agenda item 5B is consideration of approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Cambria Historical Society regarding intent to purchase property, which is at 2284 Center Street, also known as the Pocket Park, and direction to staff regarding commencing procedures to comply with the Surplus Lands Act. Staff recommends that the board consider approval of this MOU with the Cambria Historical Society regarding the intent to purchase, and direct staff to commence procedures to comply with the Surplus Lands Act. The background here is that the Historical Society has notified the district of its interest in purchasing the property, and the board has met a couple of times in closed session to discuss this briefly, as well as an ad hoc that was set up to look at it in more detail. And District Council Carmel is also standing by to answer any questions you have on the MOU itself and the Surplus Lands Act requirements.
Okay, thank you, Jim Weigold. Let me see, do we, Mr. Carmel, do you have anything you'd like to add at this time before we enter into discussion? Okay, let us go to the public and listen to them first, and then we'll come back to the board. Not everybody, don't all line up at once. Okay, Mr. Ellers, please come in.
Good afternoon, directors. I'm John Ellers, Cambria citizen and former president of the Cambria Historical Society. I'm here to urge you to make the Pocket Park property at the end of Bridge Street available so it can be purchased by the Cambria Historical Society. The purchase is another step towards fulfilling the 1994 Pros Commission vision of making Center Street a historical park. The plan is to move the Cambria jail to the property, creating an extension of the museum. Everyone is in favor of the move. The neighbors are in favor. The East Village merchants are in favor, and I think the majority of Cambria's citizens are in favor. Currently known as Needle Park by the high schoolers, the transition to private property will enable it to be cleaned up to everyone's benefit. The Cambria Historical Society is a proven steward of community resources. The Bianchini House is now an attractive feature of the East Village, and its grounds are a welcoming venue for lunch or just stop by to relax. They have restored the Majetti House and is used to archive irreplaceable local historical artifacts. More recently, the Lions donated the 1881 Santa Rosa Schoolhouse to the Cambria Historical Society, and they have, with the help of CCSD, relocated and restored the schoolhouse to a bucolic 7-acre tract on the east side of town. Purchase of the Pocket Park will be another act of improving our community. Converting the Pocket Park to a museum adjunct has no adverse impact. Parking is not affected. Traffic is not affected. Water use is not affected. And as a matter of fact, the jail will be relocated near its original site. Since there is no downside, and since there are only positive benefits to the community, I urge you to make the Pocket Park available for sale to the Cambria Historical Society. May I answer any questions?
Yes, Mr. Ellers, if you'll, let me ask you one question while we've got you, and maybe if board members have, this might be a good opportunity. Is there a time constraint from your point of view in this?
Is there a what?
How important is it that we do? I'm just wondering if we were to delay this by a month, whether this would adversely affect your plans.
Quite frankly, this issue has been bubbling for years, and I don't see what another delay would help or what it would serve.
Okay, well, that's a good answer. Thank you. Director Gray, I think he may have a question for you, Mr.
I have a question for Mr. Ellers, I guess, too. This is regarding the jail. As you mentioned, the schoolhouse was donated by the Lions Lions Club for its use by the Historical Society. What is the status of the jail donation, or if it's happened yet, or if it's been committed to from the, I guess I understand the Lions own that as well.
The Lions currently own the jail, but according to several conversations that I've had with several presidents over the last several years, they are more than willing to donate it for this application. They think it would be a better site than currently on the Pine Dorado grounds.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ellers? Just while you've got him online here. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellers. Let's see, maybe something else will come up where we'll need your assistance here. So you're welcome, and thank you. Let's go with Kermit Johansson, please.
Mute. Oh, okay. Thank you. I did caught that part. Yes, I've sent in a lengthy, or 5 pages anyway, of historic plans and so forth in the 1994 plan, and I do really agree with the historical society master plan and so forth. We do also have, I represent, or coming today as a Cambria Bicycle Alliance, a consortium of people that just really have no status per se, just interested in putting trails and commuter trails in. And we do have sort of a proposal, and that's about all it is, because we don't have permissions. We're still early in the whole process. But we do have competing interest in that area, only for the purpose of a 10-foot multi-purpose trail that would include possibly want to include a bridge across, as they have in their master plan, but which was, I think, was fostered by the kind of desire to cross that area, or the area down from the Eaton Drive down through Tin City down to the Bridge Street. And I think uses can compete on it well. It's just that when you change an ownership pattern, and from the actual bicycle trail probably would end up being property of the CCSD or the county, and that's kind of a conflicting use on that trail or of that property. So right now there is no it's a property and fee sale, I think, and that precludes any other use of that should it not want to be. There's also another another person's ownership that kind of goes along with that. I believe they're thinking of procuring, and I think it's probably necessary that it be procured. That would also be the area where you would cross the creek, because that pretty much lines up in there in that whole concept of the historic stage road that was down there, and it's probably where the bridge may end up there just because of precedence. So none of this has been talked over with them. I haven't. They don't know us from anybody, and frankly, we just haven't even been able to discuss it. I doubt if we're conflicting. I doubt if it may be a thorn in their side to have a trail of any consequence running through there, because it would be like a public sidewalk. But then again, it may not be, because it apply to access, and it does showcase the building and so forth like that. So that type of thing just hasn't been ironed out yet. And I would actually suggest that this kind of maybe go through the pros commission just to review this stuff and see if we can come to understanding and put a place for the trail, assign a place for the trail, and or an understanding of the trail and bridge across the area right there. Ownership and stuff like that have yet to be ironed out, I'm sure. And I'm not sure they want to own a trail, but if the easement could suffice that legal liability that they would have. But again, it would be an open piece of property. I'm not sure how they intend to fence theirs, or if they do at all. And that's pretty much it. So it's just trying to reserve a space among competing uses that would be precluded by a piece of property being taken off, and then the next step, another piece of property that falls out of the gateway that would be, both of them are germane to access in that area. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johansson. Director Gray, do you have a question or comment for
Well,
Mr.?
the question is actually a question, a procedural question. I think Mr. Niffen was starting to talk about this matter back in his report, and I don't know if he's here to clarify it, but I thought he had more to say.
Thank
He
you.
said, okay, yeah, let's pick it up when we get to the item. So I don't know if he has more to say about than has been said so far.
No, I just think it would have been easier for you guys if we'd have reviewed and had this conversation, not at a CCSD board meeting. I want you guys solving my water problems, not figuring out why the dogs are biting each other on the ranch. So I was just thinking we'd have been able, and as far as that open space park, yeah, it's just more of an open discussion that we would have had, and hopefully we'd have said, hey, we endorse this, and it would have just been an action item. All right.
Thank you.
Consent or whatever.
No problem. Okay, Mr. Gray, go ahead, and then we'll go to.
Yeah, the reason I asked about that is that Mr. Johansson was talking about something which sounds like a desire for an easement across the property if we sell it, and I don't know if that's been fleshed out as a proposal or as a something that pros should look at. That's because it sounds like a new wrinkle that's been introduced.
It's not a wrinkle that should slow down the sale of this property. It's just an idea that's out there. I have no fear that the Historical Society will work in conjunction with good ideas. It was just something, and this thing has just been boiling for the last couple of months as we've been listening to Kermit talk about these different things. And it's really just part of the larger conversation with electric bikes and all of that. The San Luis stuff, it's all of it. So anyway, I just want I would hope the conversation would take place at the Pros Commission and not at this level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nick. Let's go to Director Farmer, and then we have some more commentary which may help us in this from the public as well. So first, Director Farmer, and then we'll go to the public.
Thank you, President Howell. I think I mentioned earlier that I'd spoken yesterday with both Kermit Johansson and Mr. Ellers with regard to this issue. And now Mr. Niffen is here now, who's the chair of PROS. And I offer the possibility that perhaps instead of us voting on this today, that we send it to the Pros Commission so they can discuss it at their next meeting, which would be the first Tuesday of next month. So they have the opportunity, like I say, just discuss this issue among themselves. I think they're in agreement with the fact that this sale should take place, but I think maybe we owe them the courtesy of allowing a discussion among the commissioners, and then they can send their findings, we should say, or their conclusion, or whatever you would want to call it, back to us, and then we vote at our first October meeting. So I'm just offering that as a possibility. I know that folks from the Historical Society would feel that, well, we've waited long enough, can we do it now? But I don't think one more month is going to make that much a difference. And as I said, and as Steve said, perhaps it would have been a good idea if we had first sent this off to Pros, since it is about a park. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Director Steidel, go ahead.
Thank you, President Howell. I understand the idea of sending it to Pros first. I think probably what's carried this in the way that it has is that this is something that the Historical Society, related to a Cambria historical district, has been working on as long as I can remember. It has to be at least 5 or 6 years. And I appreciate that with the passage of time and the advent of electric bikes, all of a sudden there's an interest that a piece of this could be used in that way. But I don't know that electric bikes in the Cambria Historical District carry the same charter.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way. I think that the Historical Society has spent a great deal of time and effort. There have been closed session meetings, there have been legal meetings, there have been that have gone on for years and years and years about this. And I don't understand the need for having pros look at it at this point. They could have interceded at any point during this. It's an individual commissioner who's involved and excited about bicycles that wants to segment this property. And frankly, I don't understand how the two would exist together, because a bicycle path is a bicycle path or a walking path. And people stray from it, and you get a lot of cross interaction that could be a real issue for the area. So I'm definitely a proponent for keeping this a specific area for the Cambria Historical District, which it has always been targeted for.
Okay, thank you, Director Steidel. Well, let's go to the public, see what I think they might add. And then, Mr. Niffen, I saw your hand. Let me go to the public first and then come back to you. So we have John Ellers, followed by Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
I perhaps was premature in putting my hand up. I would say there is another piece of property adjacent to the pocket park that is in private property. That is the location where a walking bridge would have to be placed. So that has a higher priority in my mind rather than the pocket park itself.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Elizabeth Bettenhausen, please.
Thank you very much, President Howell. I have an old photograph that shows when the CCSD headquarters were on that lot, which some of you might remember. And then I have another photo which shows the lot having been vacated by the CCSD headquarters, and a sign is lying there on the ground, fairly rich in green vegetation, back when it used to rain. The sign on the ground says the future headquarters. And so, I mean, this history is fascinating, and I would really like to read the chapter after somebody writes it on what has just been brought up about the adjoining property. Because as many of you know who've lived here even longer than I have, walking that area is an exploration trek. And to go from the Creekside Park, controlled by Green Space, and to get from there to the little pocket park, you have to go around on the street, etc. There are complexities here that I won't elaborate because I'm tempted to talk about enforcement issues and the jail, but I'll resist that. I will not bring it up. But I suggest that it is premature to take this up, partly because there's been insufficient discussion of whether or not anyone is negotiating with the private property owner. I know it's a barrel of tricks and a half, but is anything happening there so that you could look at this area as one park jointly controlled by Green Space and CCSD, for example, as well as the Historical Society? So there are many issues here. I shudder at the prospect of a bridge across Santa Rosa Creek right there, and no matter whose property it starts on, because of the flood prospects, number one. And you can imagine my perspective for all sorts of other issues having to do with ESHA, et cetera. So I think it's very premature to discuss this, other than if you're getting an MOU to start negotiating with Historical Society, and the negotiations would entail all manner of discussion about the details of the general property as well as the specific lot. Thank you. If you do go ahead with this, and Historical Society goes ahead with it, please put a notice on website and in the paper that we can come down there and watch the transport of the jail. Because I've looked at that building for quite a while and figure I really want to know in the chapter on that jail, how many people actually spent more than 24 hours in that jail? Because if they did, they were not imaginative in how to get out. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Okay, now Mr. Niffen, followed by Jim Beringer.
Yeah, I want to agree with Ms. Seidel and the people. We're not gonna, by putting it back to pros, we're just gonna slow it down. We're not gonna change anything. We got to move forward with that and get that thing done. The points are well taken about the bridge. Let's go. But next time, just bring it for us, and there you go. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Niffen. Okay, Jim Beringer, please.
I'm gonna unmute. Okay.
You are. Well,
I agree that I'm not necessarily against it. However, and I understand how in closed session you have to make negotiations, and then once you're done with the negotiations, you come and bring it to the public. But there's an opportunity here to delay it a little bit. For one reason, I have a question as to whether it might be better to rent, like you do with a property near Santa Rosa Creek, and therefore, if there was a need to use it for another purpose, we could be a long-term rental. Another one is that did you consider alternate uses like EV charging stations, or perhaps even sell it to a higher bidder for other uses? So I don't know if that's precluded by this, or if this is the first step toward allowing a bid process to go forward, because it might have some economic value. Some people don't, when the homeless people are gone and it's nice and clean, it'll have value, but it's necessarily right now it's a liability for the district. But I think taking it to the pros and allowing people to make other ideas or decisions probably won't change it. I agree with Steve, but next month we could then have a vote on this particular issue. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Okay, Director Steidel, please.
I just wanted to clarify, just as some background for folks, that there have been multiple closed sessions on this issue because it had to do with negotiation and discussions and things going on relative in that regard, where the options were, were in essence, you fell away quickly because of limitations, and this isn't coming, fully formed from nowhere. It's an evolution that's happened, like I said, over at least the last 6 years that I know of, and I do believe that that area is designated as an historical district and should be allowed to be that without the interference of urban intrusion. I'll call it for that, for lack of a better term, by other methods of transport across the area. There are some questions that I did want to ask, though, that were probably more legally based. And I don't know whether this is the appropriate time to do that, President Howell, or whether you wanted to formally bring it to the board again, or how this is going to work.
Let me think. I think the public seems to have, nobody else really wants to speak at the moment, and I think the issues have been laid out fairly well. So I think maybe it is time to ask the legal questions. Okay,
thank you. Mr. Carmel, I'm afraid that I'm probably going to have to call on you for most of these. The first thing I was curious about is if CCSD would be responsible for any transactional fees. I mean, is this something that title company's involved in, or can it be handled just as a legal documentation?
We're pretty early in the process to even touch that issue. I don't see us paying fees just based on the amount of money that's being offered. And I think that issue may have been discussed before. It would probably run through a title company for a lot of reasons.
Okay, thank you. I know that there's an effort and a financial resources impact to this as far as CCSD is concerned, because of having to take things through county planning and building, and the county sent it to the HCD, and the notice of availability for certain park and rec facilities. and state resource agencies regarding open space. So there's still actions to happen on this in the way that this particular piece of property may be touched by people outside this district if it's offered for sale. So that adds additional complexity to the idea of a multi-use purpose for that property lot. Do we have, again, for Mr. Carmel, does this create any obligation or commitment by the district and pros for the furthering development of anything related to the Cambria Historical District along Central Street? Or would the sale of this property to the Historical Society basically mean it's their piece of property, it's their actions and costs?
Again, I think that's something that'll be addressed after we run through the Surplus Lands Act and declare the property surplus. Those issues will be discussed probably, well, you may discuss them in open session and addressed at that point in time.
Okay, and I would assume this last one probably falls in that same kind of category. And that would be whether his Historical Society would be required to interact with CCSD for any future development actions at that site, assuming that it isn't water related or something along those lines. Or is it, once this becomes a Historical Society property, if that's the path that's taken, then what they do there is within the confines of the planning department of the county, and that's just about it.
I think the district will have the ability to impose restrictions on the property if that was so desired, to ensure that it would be used in the manner that which it's intended at this point in time. The basis of this sale, if it happens, is that it will be used for a public purpose, furthering essentially one of your purposes. And I think that's going to have to be considered carefully when you determine whether you're going to restrict its use in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, President Howell.
Thank you. Director Gray.
Thank you, President Howell. Question for Mr. Carmel on the detail of the MOU. It is noted that the Historical Society has made an offer, $5,000 to buy the property. There's no further discussion of counterbid or whatever. Is that, and the public, I guess to clarify for the public, what is being agreed to here? The MOU, maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're agreeing to negotiate the sale, negotiate their purchase or our sale of the property. We haven't agreed to a price at this point, have we?
Mr. Carmel.
Mr. Carmel, yes.
We haven't agreed to anything. This is a non-binding expression of intent.
Yeah.
It's not binding. So there has been no agreement. I know we have heard they pay $5,000, but we haven't gone any further than that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that does help to clarify where we are in all this. Let's see, does any other director, do we have any more? I think we're almost ready to take an action here. Does anybody else have anything to say? Okay, I'm gonna, go ahead, Director Farmer. Oh, you're muted.
Pardon me, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, let's see what your motion is.
Okay, I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with the Cambria Historical Society regarding the intent to purchase the property at 2284 Center Street and direct staff regarding commencing procedures to comply with the Surplus Lands Act.
Excellent. Okay, and it's a second by Director Seidel and a third by Director Gray.
We got our vote.
So let's see now is the time. If we have any more formal debate here? I'll just weigh in a little bit. I tend to go. I'm kind of going with Mr. Niffen on this. On the one hand, I agree and admit and also with Mr. Beringer that if we were doing this over, we probably should have, not probably, we definitely should have engaged pros in this discussion early on. And so for that, but on the other hand, I appreciate Mr. Niffen's point that having said that, he saw no particular value in postponing this action. So, but I did want to make that call out to pros. As I don't know how the rest of you all feel, but I just wanted to make that. If anything, that would have been on me, you know, to
Thank
make.
you. That's fine.
Okay, but please, I love pros, and I really want them to be active and do a lot of good work. So I want to be encouraging, and so I apologize for that. All right, having said that, I think we're ready for the question, are we not? Everybody, okay. Yes, Ms. Riedel, would you please call the roll?
I sure will. Director Farmer?
Aye.
Director Farmer, aye. Director Stidel?
Aye.
Director Stidel, aye. Director Gray?
Aye.
Director Gray, aye. And President Howell?
Aye.
President Howell, aye.
The motion passes 4-0 with one director absent. Very good. And at this, we are now ready. Ms. Riedel, I neglect, it's kind of after the fact now, I fear, but was there any written comment on this item? Did I forget to call it? Oh, good. I've been saved. So we're okay.
No.
All right, so we're now ready for the board member and committee liaison reports. If there are any, anybody wishes to, I don't see anything here in my packet. Do we have any reports verbal from Finance Committee, Policy Committee, R&I, or any other reports at this point? Okay, seeing none. I will say, I know you all are expecting Director Gray and me to come back with our policy inventory, and we're a little late on that, and that's my fault. So we'll, Director Gray, if you agree, we'll shoot for would that be the first meeting in October to?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah. Okay, and with that, well, I think we are sufficient for the day. As anybody? Oh, future agenda items.
Okay. Actually.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, President Howell. I actually have one that kind of grows out of the discussion about the dogs off leash, because I've been talking to people who, both people who have who usually are very good about obeying the leash rule, and some who may not so good about it. And there are now and then complaints about the dog park that it's not everybody's cup of tea. There may have some deficiencies. Like one person who was walking her dog on a leash was talking about all the wood chips that her dog comes home with, whatever there. And there's some elements of it I don't know. I don't know if it could be improved. What the satisfaction level is, but maybe I was thinking this is something I don't want to give pros. Well, I guess pros could use the word. Give pros the assignment of maybe doing collecting some public input on the dog park satisfaction, both from dog owners who use it, dog owners who don't like to use it, and see what might be done in the way of improving it, if it's possible, within the realm of reasonable amount of money and whatever, and just report their findings back, because there might be some things we could be doing that make a little more have more people using it, essentially, I think, and a little satisfaction that way. So
it makes sense.
Yeah.
So right now, this is just a possible agenda item. We may need a formal
agenda item, yeah.
But we'll see. I've got it down here, and I think we'll talk a little bit with Mr. Niffen as well.
Yeah,
it's excellent. I mean, it's always, but at some point you do have to get feedback. Is what we did? Did it work? Okay, Director Stidel. I do see also the public has something as well, but Director Stidel, please go ahead.
Thank you. To the point that Director Gray was just making, in concert with that, I think finding some ways to kind of put that request for feedback out to the public a bit, maybe by Cambria CA or something like that, because that would help engender more discussion or more awareness of it, and maybe some more valuable feedback.
Excellent. Very good idea. Any other future agendas? Well, I'll get to Mr. Beringer in a minute here. Okay. So Mr. Beringer, please come in.
unmute.
There you are.
I think that I agree with the decisions that the board has made. Director Stidel really made an excellent point on the pocket park. And I know that and maybe putting something out on Cambria CA to get public input, but if they could be directed to the pros as the way to do it. And I think Steve and Niffen said that too. Let's have a meeting that brings more than, 2 people in that meeting. So I think I just wanted to say that I thought that the arguments that were made are excellent on both issues that the directors made, and I appreciate your work.
Thank you. So I think, let's see, any other future agenda items? Okay, I think we're good then. So, this leaves a whole portion of the afternoon still left. My goodness. I don't know, what am I going to do? So anyway, thank you all for attending today, and our next meeting is next week. So we look forward to that. And before we go, we had a number of questions regarding the financing issue and all the ins and outs of the bonds and all that. I'm just not quite sure how to deal with that for the sake of the public. Do we have some way? I mean, we're still in the meeting, and this is kind of, let's call it a future agenda. I don't know, but I was just hoping that I could get some guidance, particularly from you, Director Stidel, as to maybe offline, you and I can talk. Let's
be happy to do that, President Howe, certainly.
At some point here, I'll text you or something, and we'll get together then on that.
And I did notice there are a couple of public comments that have popped up.
Oh, well, let's let them talk here since we got all this time anyway. Okay, Michael Calderwood, followed by Deborah Scott.
Hi, thanks again. To your question you just asked, President Howell, my one suggestion I would offer is that the public go and watch the last meeting, the special meeting of, I think it was the 31st of August, where a lot of the questions that were raised by some of the public commenters were answered in great detail around all of the parties involved, the process that was used to determine the best mechanisms going forward, how it would be executed, who would be involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of great information in that meeting. Tough to plow through, but if we want to get to the facts, that's probably a great place to start. Thank you.
Thank you for that excellent reminder. Okay, now Deborah Scott, please.
Thank you, President Howell and board members. I appreciate your saying what you just said, President Howell, about what are you going to do with the feedback that you got about the loan, because I think that's very important to the community for them to be able to have a response from the board about that. The other thing is that, and I've been talking with people in the community about the increase in the water, well, the sewer, the trash people. And I was lucky enough to be on the Zoom call when that was being discussed, and that was really discussed in detail. And so I think it would be important for anyone who has questions about what that is about to go ahead and make sure that they listen to that board meeting, because that was a great explanation of what's happening with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Yes, we participate in these meetings, and sometimes my mind is always on the next one, so I kind of forget what we've just done. Director Stidel.
So I don't know whether this is the time to do it, and please, stop me if it's inappropriate, President Howell, but I did, as the wastewater rates issue, the Prop 218 was just brought up. I just wanted to have the opportunity to provide the two views to the circumstance, because I don't know that gets voiced all the time. And certainly the circumstances of additional rates, we don't want to pay any more. Why should we have to do? I understand that completely. I'm going to be doing the same thing if it passes. the other side of the coin is that the reason that the rates are going up predominantly is because the state has imposed something on the wastewater providers that says that certain activities are going to, I see Mr. Carmel. Mr. Carmel, am I taking it someplace where it shouldn't?
We're skirting the edge here, I think. Yes, Mr. Carmel.
This isn't an agenda item and it's becoming an elaborate conversation.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I apologize. Thank you.
It's tempting though when we get everybody here.
Yeah.
So,
So I'll just do it with the caveat of when you're considering the question, ask what is the other side of the coin.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Well, I think then it's time probably for us to go on about our rest of our day's business. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. So bye-bye, everybody.